just with like the red day that we had on Friday necessarily. So one of our guesses was that it could possibly reverse the moon cycle since it was happening so close to the full moon, which is usually a local top for us. And it'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. But that's again something we would have to watch day by day by day to see whether or not like that's even in the works.
Yes. So true. So we're gonna keep watching what happens after this full moon or what happens now because we just had the full moon yesterday. Now we're entering the waning period, and it could continue the uptrend. Another thing that we had Emily had an interesting idea about the Uranus retrograde, signifying a different trend, and we're definitely Friday was the beginning of that, and we started to get an uptrend since then. So hopefully we stay there. Okay.
Even if it swapped Monday highs and Friday lows, like that would be amazing. Even if like those days switched around whenever that was happening, there's a bunch of patterns that could be reversing themselves.
Yes. And by the way, Emily, I had us muted at the very first 30 seconds, so I'm gonna do the intro one more time.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys are watching the Market Moonlord, where we merge the matrix with the motherfucking stars. I'm your host, Jason Alexander, the Blue Moon and Neptune. And today we're going over the fifth house of our astrology and what that says about our trading style. So if you guys didn't catch me at the beginning, the house systems tells us a certain scenario that's happening in our life. And the first house is the projection, our persona, the direction we want to take our life. And the fifth house will have anything to do with our creative, speculative, ambitions, you could say. And the fifth house astrology, financial astrology speaking, has a lot to do with how we risk manage, how we speculate on the stock market, and basically how we're going to build our portfolios and so on. Okay, so now another thing we want to talk about, what's happening in the sky today, is the fact that the sun just went 0 degrees Virgo, which is a great time for us to get into the Virgo energy. So paying attention to the details, analyzing the details, and then making appropriate strategies around those details we analyze. So, Emily, is there anything you would want to say about Virgo season?
Virgo season is on, and Mercury's in Virgo, which means that it's actually like a super hyped up location. And AMC has Mercury as Time Lord. So I was always interested about this period being a peak period for AMC anyways. But the other thing that's significant about today is that we have the Venus and Saturn trine, and Venus and Saturn are both in domicile. So they're both acting with a lot of dignity. And those are sextiling exactly AMC's natal Uranus. So again, I would not at all be surprised to see like a new trend that's starting. And there's been a lot of DD saying that. There's a couple of like really big Twitter accounts that I don't, on their own, I wouldn't believe anything that they were saying, but we actually had a MOONLORD who's been tracking and had research going in all of this and had all the charts to show something big coming around this area. So him, I will listen to him, I believe, like, but from two different sources. Now I'm actually starting to get like a little too excited.
Yeah, I'm getting excited too. Let me shout out the chat real fast. We got some new people in here. Some of the veteran Moonlords. What's up, Shonda? What's up, Denai Tico? I hope I said your name correctly. Tom Wesley, what's good? He's another Pisces magician. Let us know what type of music you do. If you play any instruments, I'm very curious about that. We got a lot of Pisces energy and a lot of Scorpio energy that does music with the Moonlords. So hopefully one day the Moonlords will record something that would be fucking dope. Okay, he did answer. He says he produces and he sings. That's awesome. I produce, I sing. I'm not the best singer in the world, but I'm really good on the computer, and I can make my voice sound better than it actually does. Which majority of the music is like that anyway. I'm really not sure what genre you would call it. It's kind of like experimental pop. Yep, that's very Piscean of you. We do it all. We wear many hats. I feel you there. Let's see who else is here. Disco Esco. Hopefully I said your name right. Austin, you two both look new. I may have seen one of you guys here before. Purely Unbodied, John was good. Shonda, another
He's
Scorpio.
the one that did the charting. He's a good one to find on Twitter, on the Discord, if you have any questions about what's exciting about this period of time right now.
Yes, John, drop your Twitter. Let everyone know what your Twitter is. Anyone else who wants to drop or self-promote, go ahead and drop that stuff. We're all trying to spread the love here. Let's see.
This is a good crowd. There's a lot of people that you probably want to be listening to.
Facts. Okay, so let's describe the fifth house in astrology. Okay. Now, if you guys understand what the house systems are, great. If not, you'll pick it up as we go. Okay. There's 12 signs of the zodiac. Therefore, there's 12 houses. Each sign naturally belongs to a house, just like each planet naturally belongs to a house. The houses actually came before the planet and before the sign, but that's a whole nother situation, whole nother subject. But anyway, the houses are very, very, very important because you can kind of look at the house like a map almost, and each house will tell you how you participate in that part of life. Would you say that's fair to say? Or a scenario
Yes.
going down in that part of life? So
They all have
describing the
different
fifth,
regions that they rule, but every part of your life is covered by one of them somewhere.
right, right. And a really good way of me explaining the fifth is explaining the house before the fifth, okay? Because each house is like an evolution of the house before, okay? Or the next phase after the house before. So the fourth house before the fifth would be home, family, mother, children, everything happening in your very close vicinity. It has a lot to do with like your soul, like your very most comfortable place in your chart is your fourth house. That's why we consider it the home house, the mother house, the children house. Okay. Now, after the fourth house would be some astrologers would say that's the father house. Some people use opposite house for the father, which is 10th house, or excuse me, opposite house of the fourth, which is the 10th, right? And I do use the 10th to see kind of the father, but I also use the fifth. So the fifth house would be the father and the children and how the father educates the children. So the fifth house has a lot to do with education. The fifth house has a lot to do with learning and teaching. That's why a lot of people with fifth house energy, I have a stellium in the fifth house. I love to teach and I love to learn. Okay. Now, children also love creativity. So the fifth house has a lot to do with creativity. And after the father teaches the children and sends them off to the world, you don't really know what's going to happen. It becomes very speculated. You educated them, you raised them, but you don't know what's going to happen. So the fifth house becomes a very speculated house, kind of how we learn something and then take action on what we learned. So that's why it has a lot to do with how we take action on trading stocks. What do you think, Emily?
Yes. And honestly, we started talking about this because I had my own fifth house issues. Like Jason and I, and the way that our fifth houses are built up, like we should not be trading with the same strategies. There's a lot of info and a lot of stocks that we'll cross over on, but Jason definitely has like more leadership, like his fifth house is in Aquarius. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. So we were kind of talking about the fact that you can be a really good financial astrologer and also like a really shit trader at the same time. And some of these things are like really well laid out in your chart. Like we started looking through examples of like celebrity traders and their charts and what their fifth houses looked like. And in a lot of cases, they were really similar to what you would expect to see and what we know of them and the way that they trade and interact with the stock market or have had occurrences of. So I think it's really good, like, especially as we're coming near all-time highs, to figure out like what your chart is telling you about how you should be interacting with these opportunities, because you can get all of the big numbers in the world, but if you don't know your charts, both your technical charts and your birth chart, you're going to have a harder time catching that wave all the
Right.
time.
And the best way to explain kind of how the fifth house plays out in trading is basically look at a few houses for some famous people in the trade market. We're looking at Martha Stewart today, and we're going to look at Warren Buffett. Okay. And by the way, Shonda, I think Uranus goes retrograde to the 10th degree because I remember looking at that to see when it was going to go opposite AMC's North Node. So, and it goes direct on the 10th degree. I'm almost certain on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Warren Buffett's chart. Okay, so there's this chart right there on the screen. I'm going to move the chat a little bit so we all can see the chat still. Okay, so if you guys see here, I'm looking at Warren Buffett. The source of this time is that A is very, very reliable. He was born August 30th, 1930. Wow, he is old. Jeez. He's been in the game a long time. Okay. So if you look at his fifth house, right? So if we look at the houses, let me get some tools so I can draw for you guys. If we look at his houses, he has he has his first house right here. Let me change the color. And you can see his fifth house is ruled by, oh, sorry guys, the color's white. There we go. All right, we can see his fifth house is right there. All right, there's the 5, and there's the first house right here. Okay, so the first house always starts right here, guys. And then you guys can simply look at house 1 right there in the arrow. House 2 starts or ends right there. House 3 starts right here. House 4 starts right here. And then house 5 starts right there. Okay, so if you guys want to look at your chart, just look at the 5th house, and that's what we're focused on. Okay, so the 5th house for Warren Buffett, you can see it starts right here on this arrow, and that starts with Taurus. Okay, so if you guys know anything about Taurus energy, first of all, it's an earth sign. Okay, so what does the earth tell us? It tells us that he wants to be consistent, he wants to be disciplined, he probably wants to work on things long term, he wants to probably start the race slow and steady. So he's going to be into like dollar cost averaging. He's definitely not the type just to throw everything in at one time with that energy. And that's also Venus. Okay, Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus is the planet of balance. Venus is the planet of money, abundance. Okay, so he'll be really big on balancing his portfolio, probably being super diversified, and also playing it very, very slow and steady like the Taurus. But what happens with the Taurus? It's slow to get started, but once it gets going, it's very hard to stop. What do you think, Emily?
He once had, this is one of my favorite quotes, but this is like the most Taurian thing in the world. Like one of his famous quotes is, the stock market is a tool to transfer wealth from the impatient to the patient. Like that is like, you can't, that is like the Taurus mantra right there. And he's really made a successful career off of that. And it's an interesting thing to wonder, like, is that because he was naturally answering to like what his stars asked him to do? Like, would he have been that successful if he had tried any other way? Or was that just his natural inclination? He was always going to trade like that. But that is a very, very, very successful placement and successful use of a birth chart.
Right, exactly. So
I feel like Martha's more of a warning.
Yeah. So if you guys have earth energy for your 5th house, it's very clear to say that, you know, taking crazy risk isn't where your karma is, and it's more in a space of taking your time slow and steady. And it's also about making very, very, very practical decisions. Okay. So a Taurus 5th houser is the type of person who really wants to look at the entire trade and then make a very calculated risk management trade with that. Okay. And they will more likely have better chances of making money the longer they stay in the trade. Would you say that's true, Emily?
Totally true. And the other big part of Taurus that like is it not a really well understood secret, but once Taurus makes up their mind about a stock that they're investing in, it's very hard to change that mind. And that is something that you should actually really lead into, because that is like the Taurus powers of manifestation protecting your investment. Like as long as you're keeping your belief in it. And of course we do our due diligence, we do all that kind of stuff, but a Taurus 5th house, you got to obey that, because those are cautious money instincts, but they're dead on. You know, the bull is the sign of the stock market. Like absolutely trust those hyper cautious instincts as they're like coming around to you, I would say.
Yep, exactly. So we have someone calling out their 5th house. Tom Wesley says he has Cancer in the 5th house. Okay, so that's a very interesting placement to
Tom, where's your moon?
Yeah, where's your moon? That's going to tell us a lot. And that's I'm glad you said that, Emily. That's another trick we can use. So we can see what planet rules your 5th house and then see where that planet is in your chart. So if we look at Warren
Buffett,
there's
so many. If you have planets that are living in your 5th chart or 5th house, if you have planets that are aspecting your 5th house, like there's so many clues that come around it that we can't possibly address all of them in this, you know, one stream. But there's actually a lot of information. If you're still learning and you're trying to develop what that style is, take some astro hacks for sure.
Right. So we said Warren Buffett's 5th house is ruled by Taurus, and Taurus is Libra, or excuse me, Taurus is Venus, and Venus is right here. If you guys look at the chart, Venus is right there in the sky. And where is it at? It's in his 10th house. Okay, so he wants to take a lot of his 5th house energy and put it in the 10th house of what he's doing in the world, what he's doing with his career, what he's doing with his work. Okay, so with his career, with his work, he's going to be long and steady in the long game. He's going to build very, very strong foundations, and it's going to be very hard for him to fall from those foundations because he's so big in building strong foundations. Venus being in his 10th house and Venus ruling his 5th house of speculative business, risk taking, etc. Okay. Now, Venus is also in the sign of Libra. Okay. Libra, again, is all about balance. So I guarantee that he is always looking at the books. He's always looking at his numbers. He's always trying to balance out his risk management. So he's a great risk management balancer when it comes to his exact chart. Now, Wesley, he says he has, Tom Wesley said he has his 5th house ruled by Cancer. That's the moon. The moon is constantly moving. The moon is constantly moving signs. So, Tom, for you, it's important to remember that when you're making risk decisions, calculated risk, you are going to have to really make sure you're doing it in a very non-emotional way. And
so here's the thing, like, I actually know Tom. Tom is one of my mutuals, and he is actually like 100% in line with his trading style, because a lot of that is intuition based. It's strong. He's already profited pretty like in a massive way before, off trusting an instinct that led him, I think, into Doge like hyper early. And he's really, really, really got that. That doesn't surprise me in the least at all. And if your moon is well placed, forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it. You need a stream. You need a stream as well. We need to be taking some tips from you.
Right. And I like that. You probably be really good at understanding the trend and understanding the vibe of the market, it being ruled by Cancer, making you super, super intuitive, especially when it comes to the masses, the people, because that's what the moon deals with, people, the masses. And having the moon.
You know what else he's really good with is crypto. He's like in the front of things with crypto, which does seem kind of lunar. You know what I mean? It's like still like a bit of a dark market, and it kind of deals with like more hidden topics.
Right. And to follow where his moon went in the sign of Aries. Okay. Aries is the first sign. It's an initiator, super ambitious, and it's super into taking risk. Aries moon would take risk. Even though his 5th house is in Cancer, Aries moon would definitely take risk. And especially if you feel that energy, if you feel that vibe, you're going to probably take that risk with that moon in the sign of Aries. And you'll be very into taking risk on new things, innovative things like crypto, because Aries is very like first in line when it comes to that kind of thing. So I do like that.
The only thing about the Aries moon is, and coming into it, because I have that one too, I understand that one as well. And for trading, it is so important. Technically, that would be like a moon in detriment. And Vedic astrologers just didn't think that you should be doing anything with trading if your moon wasn't in an exalted position. Obviously, we're going to trade regardless. But it is so important to trade cool-headed. Like, do not get into Weeble when you are hot for any reason, because you can use that impetuousness in a good way, but we don't see clear when we're like firing off in that. And that's not the energy that you have to have when you're engaging with your money. So once you establish that cool state and you can channel all the other better things, go for it. But I think that's a fair cautionary tale of Aries getting like too hot and too fast and
exactly.
Sending it all to hell.
Shonda says she has a Taurus 5th house. That's awesome. She says she freaks out if the stock market goes down like 1 cent.
Totally. Yeah. But you can also invest in yourself. Yeah. You can fund your portfolio, because that's such a scary thought with the anxiety anyways, especially when you're coming up with like every little cent and every little dollar to try and build something. It matters if it goes down, but a Taurus 5th house, you can invest in yourself. You really, really can. Like, you are going to see returns one way or another.
Yeah. And Shonda says she is very patient. So that makes total
Who
total
has
sense.
Jupiter and Taurus in the 5th house? Oh my gosh. That's actually, wow, that's a lot. I would say that no, not in a fixed sign. Sometimes Jupiter in the 5th can also indicate big losses, because he can go either which way. But when you have the fixed sign, it's not really like, it wouldn't be a loss that caught you by surprise, I wouldn't think. But again, that's very, very, very favorable astrology. That's a lot of go signals in one 5th house.
Yeah. And the Jupiter in the 5th house like that, when you do make it big, it's going to be big. All right.
Big.
When you expand is going to be a big expansion. I actually have my Jupiter in Taurus, but it's not in the 5th house. It's in the 7th house. But I feel
but this is the controversial placement. In his Placidus charts, it's in the 7th house, but in my whole sign charts, it's in the 8th house of investment.
Yeah.
His Venus and his Jupiter. And they're both true. They both like hit in so many ways, but you do kind of have that 8th house grace with that too.
Yeah.
Like you actually have some really blessed placements for succeeding money wise.
We got a new person in here, Woo Felon. Never seen you here before. What's up? Welcome to the market, Moon Lord. He says his moon is in the 5th house. Moon in 5th house, Cancer. My moon is in the 5th house in the sign of Pisces. So that's really awesome placement.
That's the most dignity we've had yet. You right now are like the top of the chat. You win it all because the moon in a good condition, the moon and Mercury rule the markets. Okay. The markets are so quick moving that they have to have the fastest planet and the fastest luminary there to keep it going along. So a well-placed moon, and Cancer is the most well-placed moon you can have. It's the only sign that the moon rules. And that is another situation where you should be really working with your intuition. And as much time as you spend developing like your financial know-how and all that kind of stuff, if you aren't working with any kind of, I would just spend some time on your spirit too. I like don't even know how to say it, but like little weird psychic development things will actually be really effective for you. Like whether it's like neuro-linguistic programming, stuff like that, like you have a very fertile subconscious to be able to deal with any of that and see that manifest in the outside world. But you can do whatever you want to do. Like that's a really, really good one.
Yeah. And it's a really good aspect having the moon in the 5th house for creativity, like creative trading. So I really, really, really like that.
That just sounds so cozy and lush. Like that sounds nice for like so many reasons. That also sounds like babies. I mean, if we're being honest, it doesn't sound like you're somebody who's not going to have a family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet your creativity is off the charts with that aspect as well. Shonda says she's new in investing, so she has no idea what I'm doing. But I trust Pisces, bro, Moon Lord. That's what's up. Thank you. See, S. Francis, I think you're new too. Sagittarius 5th house with Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Thoughts? New subscriber, first to comment. Yes, I noticed you were new. Thanks for being here. Sagittarius 5th house. That's going to give you a lot of expansion energy because that is Jupiter. And that's also going to give you a lot of creativity because Sagittarius is the last fire sign, super creative. And then when you put Neptune in the 5th house, that's going to give you a lot of creativity. Uranus in the 5th house is going to give you a lot of unorthodox creativity. You're going to have like a mad scientist vibe about your trading. And then you also put Saturn in the 5th house. It's kind of different from Sagittarius, Uranus, and Neptune. Saturn is going to show a lot more consistency, being long-term. So with that type of trade, or with that type of aspect, Sagittarius 5th house with Saturn in the 5th house, I would say you would do both. You would do a lot of like swing trading, but also a lot of long-term trading. If you're not doing any
here's the thing. I have Saturn in the 5th too, never forget, because it has terrorized me. And especially with both those things, it can show lack and it can show minimalization, but generally speaking, wherever you have Saturn in your chart, just, you have to play by the rules. You know, you're not going to be able to YOLO as easily as somebody else will. Especially with like, which is weird because Uranus would totally like normally give you some of the upper hand if you wanted to do that. But I actually, like, when I hear that chart, I hear somebody who could totally absolutely be the recipient of a squeeze. I mean, all of the ingredients are there for it, but in the meantime, no matter what you do, whatever is the like best practices of that trading style, if you're dollar cost averaging, if you're doing all that, do it to the best of your ability, do the due diligence, give Saturn everything he wants, and then he will put a platform. Like you will get a portfolio. He will give strength and like support levels to whatever you're trying to grow. But he won't negotiate. Just do whatever he wants you to do.
Right. So I will do both because I know you're Saggy and you want to like, make
it's an interesting combo for sure.
So a little bit of both. Okay. But you should definitely have a long-term portfolio if Saturn's sitting in your 5th house. That's for sure. Emily will probably second that. Yep.
Yeah, I do best with, I have a Virgo 5th house. So we've been talking about this, like what that kind of looks like. And I have Saturn and I have the North Node. So it's that's actually kind of a strong placement for the North Node. So that's not a bad thing. But I do have to do the dollar cost averaging, and I have to like take my time and build my holdings and do all that kind of stuff and know why I'm doing it, know what the crypto coin actually does, like what its use is, not just because somebody told me. Like I have to do all of that work, and then I actually do make money. Like fine, okay, it's great. But if I do skip that and I tend to like kind of go from the impulsive place or from the bullish astro, because so much of that comes along, sometimes I'll bet on that and just be like, well, and that did not go in my favor. But you know, you can't turn it down every single time.
Yep, exactly. So that was for you, S. Francis. Denai says, I gamble from time to time and I tend to win. I was told it was due to my Jupiter and Taurus in my fifth house. So let me tell you about this. Jupiter and fifth house will give you expansion energy with taking risks. That is without a doubt. Okay. Now, you would have more expansion when taking risk long term. That's true as well. But one thing I want to say with Jupiter and Taurus, because I have this placement, I've done a lot of research on it. Jupiter and Taurus people will spend money to make money. See, Taurus is all about physical things and they believe in having nice things. Okay. So example I've given on this channel before is if you're a photographer and you have a lot of Taurus energy, you're going to say, hey, I need to buy the best camera because having the best quality camera, the nicest camera is going to attract the best quality customers and make me the most money. So when it comes
Is that why all your equipment is so high end?
Yes, exactly why. I will spend mad money
so
on
you're
my
like
equipment.
telling on yourself and also explaining the placement. That's good.
So Denai, I totally feel you. You know, you use money to make money, and that can totally 100% be seen with Jupiter in the fifth house and the Sun in Taurus without a doubt. Okay. So let's jump over to Martha Stewart's chart.
Okay, this one is a fun one. And she and I share a placement too. We share a couple of things.
Yeah. And for people who may not know her history in the stock market, do you want to kind of like break that down a little bit?
Okay, so Martha has had like so many lifetimes by this point, but one of the things that she's most famous for when she was at the height of her career and she had like the Martha Stewart line, everything was very preppy and ritzy and all that kind of stuff. She got investigated and actually indicted for insider trading and for multiple reasons because of like the super aggressive prosecution. Like people get away with this kind of stuff all the time. We watch it happen all the time, but she got hammered. Like they really got her and she ended up doing prison time. And everybody was fascinated with like how this like, you know, Upper East Side princess queen of everything was going to do in prison and blah, blah, blah. But now fast forward to today and she's an 80-year-old stoner who hangs out with Snoop Dogg, you know, who's made $1 billion a few times over, done time now, and is absolutely like on the other side of it, living her best life. And I have a lot of admiration for her. I think she's doing things right myself. But are we going to look, do we have her chart up?
Yep, I have her chart up.
Okay.
So guys, if you remember, you look at the first house, which should always be the AC right here. We can see her first house is Scorpio. Okay. And then we go down the little arrow. So first house, second house, third house, fourth house starts right here. And then fifth house starts right there. Her fifth house is ruled by Pisces. Okay. And then also in her fifth house, we have her south node, which is always opposite her north node. And depending if you're looking at whole sign or Polaris, we have Mars also in her fifth house. So Emily, go ahead and explain some of this energy.
Okay, so Pisces on its own can sometimes have an association with imprisonment. It's part of kind of like because of drugs and alcohol and the sort of dissolution that can come with Pisces and the involuntary nature of it. Pisces has an association with the 12th house, which is involuntary imprisonment. And South Node in Pisces is do your damnedest to keep yourself out of jail. I have this too. And I was telling Jason, and it's like not as exciting as it sounds, but I have had a bench warrant or two issued for me. There have been some times where things other people probably would not have gotten pulled on, you know, I had to like sort out and actually go through. So that is a placement for where prison actually can become part of a delineation anyways in her fifth house of trading. And the biggest warning there, like, and that is a warning if you have anything like that in your fifth house, is you have to stay away from vague or shady people. Like you can't let yourself like float into the abyss and just hand your money over to somebody and let them do whatever. You have to be a Virgo in that situation. You have to know what's in, what's out, don't let anybody else handle it is the first thing I would say. Like, have advisors, but have the final say on whatever is getting spent. But she trusted a trader, according to her, who tried to make her big gains by doing something he wasn't supposed to do, and she did time for it. The trader did not.
Right.
If I remember. Actually, don't quote me on that.
Yeah, and I would say if you have the fifth house ruled by any of the water signs, you could be that type of person who would be very good at working behind the scenes, getting insider information, because water sign deals with behind the scenes activity.
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot.
Scorpio too. Forget it.
Yeah, so having Pisces fifth house and then Scorpio ascendant, yeah, she's the type of person to work behind the scenes. But sometimes working behind the scenes can get you caught up. So just be careful. Don't be like her. Okay. But a Pisces fifth house person would be very good at getting secret information, secret that's not being shown to the public. And she would be also very intuitive about the information she's getting as well. Okay. The Pisces can kind of make you blur the lines, you could say. You can get caught up in your own illusions with Pisces energy, which is why I call myself the blue moon of Neptune, here to carry out, or here to help you see through the past the illusions of life, right? Because Pisces deal with illusions. Neptune deals with illusions here. Okay. So she probably had an idea that she was going to get away with the trade, and she probably, if she knew about it, and it kind of, didn't work in her favor. Okay. So you do have to be
and
careful.
I'd say more than anything, that's probably thanks to the South Node. Like, Pisces doesn't automatically mean you're a felon, or you're going to be
Right.
like skirting on either side of the law. But the South Node is a warning to what happens if you pull into those behaviors. You can get really swept away. They're of a past lifetime. They're not supposed to be what we embody here, even though it can be really comfortable. And I mean, Martha's somebody, especially at that time, I totally remember, because I've always loved her. I can't help, even when she was an asshole, I loved her. But she was super entitled. She was doing the huge displays of wealth and all that kind of stuff. She was getting a reputation for not treating people well, and all these stories were coming out. But again, somebody without that placement might have been able to get away with that with no questions. But that's something that just brought huge consequences to her.
Right. And another thing, I guess the fifth house would do with being ruled by Pisces, it will make her very creative when it comes to getting her money, when it comes to how she goes about getting her money. And since Pisces is co-ruled by Jupiter, it can be very expansive like energy as well. If you guys didn't know, Pisces is ruled by both Neptune and Jupiter, and Jupiter is very lucky, very expansive. Okay. But sometimes when you expand that Pisces ocean, it can be a lot of water to cover. You know what I mean? And it can get out of hand really, really quickly with that. Okay, so let's talk about her Mars being in the fifth house, because I have Mars in the fifth house for her, and to me that shows someone who would be a little compulsive. If you have Mars in the fifth house, how would you describe that?
Yeah, I could see it. Kind of going back to what I was saying too, I could see it as an entitlement. I can see it either which way, that she didn't know what her trader was doing, or that she really was so used to being around yes people and getting everything she ever asked for with that Mars, entitlement. Yeah, give it to me now. I could totally see that as being, not that it matters. She did her time. It's not something that should be rehashed a million times over. But there's definitely take what you want sort of energy whenever Mars is around.
And it can be super impatient. So if you guys have Mars in the fifth house, you definitely want to watch out for making compulsive decisions. And the more collected you are about a decision, the better the outcome when you have a lot of Mars strong energy. Okay. Shonda asks, is it wise to purchase one share at a time? If that's your strategy, yes, you just want to make sure you have enough money in that trade to when you think it's going to pop, right? So if you think the pop's going to be a few weeks out, just buy a share a day until that week is over, and then hopefully you got enough money in the trade. But what you're describing, one purchase, one share at one time, depends on the trade, if it's worth the money. If it's a $30 stock like AMC, then yeah, I think that's fine, and just build your portfolio that way. You do have the Taurus in the fifth house, ruling the fifth house, so would show
it's nice, gonna multiply
incline. Okay. Tom says, I'm a Pisces too. I know a guy who got the longest insider trading sentence in history. Jeez, yes, exactly.
I read that. That is so on brand. Of course you would. And probably somebody that had that kind of a sentence or whatever would be a lot more inclined to reveal to a Pisces. You know what I mean? That's not something that you talk about all the time, like over cocktails, like, hey, I was like the longest running insider trader. But if you were in front of a Pisces, it would probably just come like pouring out of your mouth. Like, did I ever tell you about that time I did time? I can totally see that.
Yes. And someone's asking for some books. So here's some books that I've read in financial astrology. We have, who asked me about that? Wolf Faden. We have The Theory of the Stock Market Forecasting, and this is a financial astrology book, if you can see that. And then I have this book, Financial Astrology by David Williams.
Those are both good ones.
Okay. And then I have a couple of ebooks that I'll tell you that I have. And I like to just go through these chapters. I don't read the whole book thoroughly, but I go through the chapters and pick up information that I like. There's a book called The Bull, the Bear, and the Planets. That's a really good one. The Bull, the Bear, and the Planets. That's a really good one. And then another really good one is called Exploring Financial Universe, and that's another good one. So those are the 4 books that I have that I've read probably like 40% of, which really good information. My problem with reading books is once I read something that I like, I kind of just like stop reading, and then I just start making my own like philosophy around what I just read, and then
you have to like research it. You have to find it in charts and see like all the different implications of it. Like when you find a really cool technique or
right, exactly. He asked me which one was the first book. I'm pretty sure it was The Theory of the Stock Market Forecasting by Louise McWhirter. And it looks like this, if you can see that. Yep, there it is. All right. So, we got another 5th house Pisces. We got a lot of 5th house Pisces energy. So, I guess let's do a quick snippet of our charts, Emily. We don't need to show our charts. We can just tell them what's there. I have my chart is ruled by Aquarius 5th house, and what's yours ruled by?
Virgo.
Okay, so we have a Virgo one and we have an Aquarius one. So right off the bat, Emily has the Earth energy. So what do we say about Earth energy? That's about being stable, consistent, practical. That's more of a long-term energy, and that's also Virgo. Okay, because that's also Mercury. Mercury is ruled by Virgo. And what does Mercury like to do? You guys know I talk about Mercury a lot. Mercury's paying attention to the details, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. It's super analytical, and it wants to build off of that. Everything is analyzing, okay? So Emily, I could tell you without a doubt, she's a person who's going to look at all the details and look at lots of details before she jumps into something. What do you think, Emily?
That's also in the perfectionism. There's been times where Jason's like, hey, did you buy that option yet? And I'm like, no, I'm waiting for this planetary hours, blah, 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 blah. And I've like lined up so many things with the technicals and the astrology and everything that has to work that I miss a window. So there's half of just like needing to know all of the analysis from all the angles. And then, the Virgo problem, I guess you have to let it go. You have to like let some flow happen too, so that you can just kind of enjoy the process. But the analysis is a fun part.
Yeah, exactly. And do you have anything in your 5th house, Emily?
I have Saturn in the North Node.
Oh, the North Node in the 5th house. Do you want to describe that?
That's actually a really good placement for the North Node, because the North Node is kind of like, it's the destiny that you're supposed to go to. It's kind of like the traits that you're supposed to embody in this life, even if they're not comfortable to you. But like as an astrological body, he's also very ambitious. He's somebody who likes a lot of accumulation. He likes to see the material effects of all the work that's being done. And I guess the rewards would be a good place to put that too. Whereas Ketu, like the South Node, is a little bit more like on the other plane. It's a little bit more spiritual. So North Node is kind of materialistic, and he doesn't mind the 5th house. He doesn't mind reaching for nice things at all. But there is also that with the Saturn co-presence, it also means, again, like no rule breaking. Like I have to be super authentic about everything that I'm doing, because there's more consequences for me than others. Yep, North Node's a good one. That's a good auspicious thing. If it doesn't have any contact from any malefics, that's only like a benefic present.
Totally. So Emily has the North Node in the 5th house. Wu Faden has the North Node in fifth house, and I have the North Node in fifth house. So the North Node is basically that destiny energy, the energy in our lifetime that we're going to be super, super attracted to, amplified towards. Is going to be energy that we're just like almost obsessed with, right? Is where the North Node is, okay? Because that's why it's like our destiny, because we become a little bit obsessive over where the North Node is, and what it's doing. So if it's in the fifth house, like Emily, me, and Wu, we all are very creative, okay? That's the creativity house. That's the education house. We're all very big on learning, very big on creating, being creative. We're also going to be very big on just having fun. The fifth house is the fun house. It's the entertainment house. It's the celebrity house, if you guys didn't know, because it's the children house. Children love creativity. They love to entertain. They love to be entertained. They kind of like the spotlight. So, and it's the Leo house naturally. So it is the celebrity house, the entertainment house, the fun house, but also the education house, speculative business house. I know it's a complicated house, but astrology is complicated, and that's why we're here. Okay.
It's a house of good things. It really is.
Yeah.
Good fortune.
Yeah. So fifth house, North Node fifth house will give you a lot of energy towards whatever you're trying to create, whatever you're super ambitious for. And you know what? Fifth house North Noders, we have to be careful sometimes of being over ambitious. I won't ever forget when I worked for this guy, when I was, I want to say like 21 or something. I went part-time in this job, and he was mad at me because he hired me to help him with his company, but he's also supposed to help me build my side of things, and he was just made me his helper, and I was pissed off every day at work because I'm like, I'm not here just to help you. You're supposed to be helping me too. And he was like 40, I was like 22 or something, and he was like pacing back and forth, and he was upset, and he was like, you know what, Jason, you know what your problem is? You're too ambitious. And I was like, oh, okay. But that's the type of energy the North Node will give you in the fifth house, where whatever you're trying to take it risk on, you become super obsessive and ambitious about that risk, which is really good for the stock market because that exception energy is perfect, right? It's perfect. You got to kind of be obsessed in the stock market game to be successful. Would you say that's true?
I do. And we just had a question about the eighth house and its correlation to money and wealth in the markets. And the answer is yes. It has a very big effect on everything that's going on. It's another house that can tell you a lot about inheritances, other people's money, long-term holdings, investments, and that kind of stuff. What you would do with the sort of like windfall that came, although that can be kind of introduced in other aspects. If you have beneficial placements there, that's always a good thing, and that's going to give you a lot of stability underneath your trading. But that is, the eighth house is the house of other people's money because it's the second house of earned income after the house of relationships, right? It's the money, the earned income of whoever the relationship is. And it kind of like, the money involved in trading is definitely being held there, like your actual investments and your portfolios, but how you go about getting them, like what you're doing when you're trading, how you interact with that process, and how you go about acquiring eighth house wealth is like kind of more in the fifth house realm.
What's
Hi,
up, Christina? Happy to have you here. And another thing the eighth house will do,
Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in the eighth house. Aren't you? Wait, is this the one that has the Cancer fifth house with the moon there too?
I think it might be. We're definitely going to cover the in detail because that's the next.
That's a lot. That's actually like that's very exciting. An eighth house stellium is like you're meant to be investing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're gonna do a whole episode probably next on the eighth house, but just to give my little explanation of the eighth house, everything Emily said about how you deal with your resources, kind of how you got resources and that you're going to use in the stock market, it can all be seen in the eighth house. That's also like the Scorpio house, so that has a lot to do with investigating. So kind of how we investigate when we're doing our deep DD would kind of be like an eighth house situation as well, because eighth house kind of shows where we will dig for something, especially gold. The eighth house rules gold and that precious metals and stuff. Well, I don't know if eighth house deals with precious metals, but it deals with
accumulating wealth.
Accumulating
for sure.
wealth
like that is like the hoarding. Like Jupiter might like produce riches in abundance, but Pluto is the one that makes you like stack them. Like that is his instinct for sure.
Right. So yeah, having a lot of eighth house energy can definitely show big moves when it comes to your resources. Like suddenly you can be here and then suddenly you can be there with eighth house energy, or it'd be sudden here. But it's sudden changes when it comes to eighth house energy. And if there's been really beneficial aspects going on there, you can probably say the sudden changes will be to the upside. Okay, facts. I have Venus plus Mercury in my fifth house. Okay, I have Mercury in my
What's
fifth.
the sign? What sign is your fifth house? That could be very, very good. That's normally a happy co-presence for stock, anything, for money, anything.
Yeah. While we wait for that, I'm gonna pull up my chart.
Okay. This is another good example. For me, this is the one that sealed it, that it was like, okay, there, all the information we need is actually there.
Right. So right off the bat, my fifth house is ruled by Aquarius. You guys can see that right there. Okay. Aquarius is like a mad scientist, is super original, is super unique, unorthodox, exotic. Okay. So here I am, making trades based on moon phases. Okay. That could be a perfect Aquarius ruled fifth house where I'm just totally
And
unorthodox.
Aquarius rules astrology, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
Hilarious.
like a financial astrologer. This is his whole thing of like, and honestly, there aren't that many people that Aquarius energy, wherever it comes, don't mind me telling you about yourself, but I love this fifth house for you. But wherever Aquarius is in our charts, like that's where you have to be prepared to be an outsider. Like it might not be someplace where somebody can walk you through it. You might be figured out like how to walk that path on your own or lead others down it. And how many people do you have that you can actually like kind of turn to that have the same body of like astrological knowledge that you built up with this? Like a lot of those calls you have to make pretty close to being on your own as far as like what hits with your research and that kind of stuff. And I think that's really Aquarian.
Right. And another thing Aquarius will do, since it is Saturn, it will show a little bit of consistency and discipline. But Uranus is also Aquarius. You have a Uranus energy and Aquarius energy. So for me, I'm very attracted to long-term trades, but I'm also attracted to short-term trades as well. Or sometimes, like for instance, like I'll be down on a whole bunch of trades, and then I'll see that like something else is about to go up, and I'll just exit all my losses and then put all of my marbles in a different trade. And that's very Aquarius like, because Aquarius will destroy something and build something completely new. Okay, so Aquarius is almost like a wild card energy for the fifth house, because it can be Uranus like and it can be Saturn like, and it's also very analytical but also very outside the box at the same time. Okay, another thing is Aquarius will do in the fifth house is will make you super detached, where because Aquarius rules detachment. Aquarius kind of just becomes dry and unemotional. And I don't know, when I first got into the trading market, I was a little bit emotional. But once I realized being emotional in the stock market is how you lose a lot of your money, panic selling, everything like that, I completely detached emotionally from the stock market. And now when something goes really red, it doesn't really bother me anymore. And that's kind of like my Aquarius detachment. So that's another thing. If you have like an air sign or earth sign in your fifth house, you're more than likely to be less emotional with your risk, okay, and more calculated with your risk, where you just make a decision and you just go for it. Aquarius is a fixed sign, so it's a fixated position, fixated aspect, where it's just once you make a decision, you kind of stick to that decision. Okay, now going over to my fifth house, we have Mercury there. My Mercury is debilitated in Pisces, meaning low key gets the worst results. But if you know how to work it, you can get the best results there as well. But Mercury period is very analytical. Okay, so luckily I have a very analytical planet in my fifth house of speculation. Okay, so I do become very, very analytical with that aspect. The moon in my fifth house will also make me likely to be emotional. However, I'm able to control that, obviously, because of my other placements in here. Okay, that will also make me an intuitive trader as well. We went over the North Node in the fifth house, making you like a super amplified, super obsessed with that energy. I can become very obsessive with my trades. You guys have definitely seen me obsess over certain things in the stock market. And then finally, I have the sun in the fifth house. Emily, what do you think about the sun in fifth house?
I think you have to be careful about the house getting overheated. And I think it has more implications for fatherhood, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Vitality, like that's a really good placement for a lot of energy and good health as well.
Right. And that's a good point. I have a lot of energy towards my speculated creative adventures. Lots of energy. In fact,
lots of confidence.
Yeah, I actually don't like to do things unless I'm just like I have like a vibe towards it, right? That's the sign of Pisces. We operate off of like vibes and it just feeling right and just looking right. And so I'm very much like that where I'll just get in a trade because the vibe's right or it just matches up with my actual chart, which is a whole nother subject that we'll talk about a different day, okay? But anyway, that's my fifth house. And Emily, is there anything you want to say off that, or are we good on that one?
The moon in Cancer. Christina has, I want to look at Christina's stuff. She has Mars and Saturn in Scorpio and Uranus South Node in Sag in the fifth. Gotcha. That's an explosive combination. South Node in the fifth is not necessarily a bad thing in any way, shape, and form. That looks like squeeze energy to me. I think that like you are kind of doing the right thing that you should be doing. South Node means that you are going to have some of this coming like comfortably to you. And you should be aware of, especially because it's in Sagittarius, like overly optimistic. What do they call it? Irrational exuberance. Like when that hits, like we're in a bubble or whatever, that is Sagittarius. That is going to try and talk you into like going harder than you should in big moments. Like that optimism is very important. But if somebody's getting you too wrapped up, you know, just remember like your money isn't going to miss you. You don't have to FOMO into stuff unless you want to. But that means that you have some sort of instinct in this and you are able to pick it up more quickly than most. That's one of the good things. The North Node things can be the things that we struggle with because we're constantly trying to attain them. And South Node is what's instinctual to us.
Right. Exactly. So that's a very, very good fifth house placement, Christina. Definitely want to go with your intuition, but also want to just make sure you're not just being emotional about your trades, but having really good speculation would be seen here. Being really good at taking risks and having a lot of expansion energy would also be seen here. Okay, so we're going to take a couple more questions before we end the stream. Wu Faden says, what's the role of Venus and Mars in trading? Well, Venus rules money. So Venus has a lot to do with how we use our money, how we balance our money, because Venus has a lot to do with balance. Venus will also show us kind of how we, like if your Venus in a very social placement, then you more than likely will be on the internet reading what other people have to say about a trade you might be into. You might be watching a sentiment very closely with a lot of Venus strong energy and social placement. It depends on where your Venus is with that one. But Venus has a lot to do with balance, how you're balancing your money. Okay, obviously that's the biggest thing with Venus when it comes to the stock market, how you're balancing your money. And Venus will also show you, depending on the placement, what you might like to trade in. Okay, so for example, my Venus is in Taurus, so I like nice things. I like technology. I might be into like real estate trading. I might be into trading that deals with anything in the aesthetic world as well. Depends on the Venus, where the Venus is. Now, Mars is controlling how we fight for things. It controls our passion. It controls how we take action on things. It kind of has a lot to do with our patience and impatience. So Mars obviously has a big role when it comes to the stock market, okay? Because you have Mars in a super fiery sign, you're more than likely going to be impatient, okay? You're more than likely going to want results right now, okay? And you could become super irritated if the results don't come quickly. And Mars, depending on the placement, can be very emotional, right? But if Mars is in a very strong, sturdy, collected, disciplined, stable position like Earth, then you may not be as compulsive. You may not be as irritated when things don't go your way. You may be more collected, and you may be able to stick to the strategy a lot better. So understanding your Mars in astrology, financial astrology, I would say is very important. Anything you want to add on that, Emily?
For the transit planets, when they're interacting with our charts and all that kind of stuff, Mars, for the most part, is the planet of bloody red charts. Like if he's making a contact with the personal planet of a birth chart of a stock or anything else like that, sometimes he can really like supercharge it and you can see big, fast, explosive growth. And sometimes he can just like axe the price action, just bleeding out. So he can kind of go either which way, but he is a malefic. Almost always, if we see Venus making a positive contact with something personal, or Venus conjunct Pluto, that's a great example of it. Pluto, the power planet, the wealth hoarder, all that kind of stuff. When they first conjuncted on January 26th, we all saw what happened with GameStop and AMC. So Venus is very, very, very in the mix in all of this, but she doesn't move quickly enough to be a market mover. But because she moves a degree a day, like she's always kind of like working into other aspects of things. And watching Venus transits is a really good way to look for potential upside, because she usually does come with some.
I like it. And I agree with it. Okay, so we have Metro Wizard. He says he has Lilith and Virgo, and it rules his 5th house. Basically, all I'll say about Lilith and the stock market is Lilith is more of like our shadow side of our Venus, kind of how I would say is like it has a lot to do with our selfish
like primal
side.
too. Yeah,
It's very primal. So Lilith in the 5th house, like I would say, when you win, it really makes you feel really,
you
really
like want to
good.
dance in the blood of your enemies. Like Virgo is so hyper competitive too. Like that is probably a really intense transformative experience for you.
Yeah. When you get really into something creative, you get super into it, and you want to win at like you really want to win. You don't want to lose with Lilith in the 5th house like that. Okay, Venus and Virgo and Mars and Scorpio. Okay, Venus and Virgo, when I said Venus has a lot to do with how you balance things, you're going to be very analytical with your portfolio, and you're going to be very analytical with your money and how you use your money, and you're going to really want to make sure everything's on point. Mars and Scorpio would also kind of be like that, because Scorpio is super, super controlling and is like a control freak, especially when it comes to their resources, their power. Okay, so you're very strategic about letting go of your money, and you become intense about it. So I guarantee once you put your money somewhere, you're intensely following it, and you intensely want it to go good, else it's going to make you irritated. But you're a type of person, since Scorpio is a fixated sign, when you make a decision, you will be able to stick to it with the Mars and Scorpio. That's actually one of the strongest positions I see in the market, or I see in a chart. Mars and Scorpio.
Yeah, that's Mars and domicile again. So that's a lot of dignity that you have in your chart, Will Faden. And I would totally recommend getting that checked out. If you haven't, book something with an astrologer, because it sounds like there is a lot of potential and a lot of ways to work that chart. Like you have so many different things going for you that having somebody track your transits and like catching when those things are being activated could be very, very wealth producing for you, because you really have some blessed placements.
Yes, facts. Metro said absolutely on the whole Lilith thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Starland 23, you're new here, I think. Fascinating conversation. Moon in the 7th house. Yeah, that's and Taurus.
Oh, Taurus moons are one of our favorites. We're always like propping them up. That is an exalted position of the moon. He is a Pisces moon, again, exalted position. That is very, very good. Whatever other transits that you have and placements in your chart, that means that you basically have the cosmic go ahead to be a well-balanced trader. Like your emotions are going to serve you well. They're in check.
Facts. Okay. So we'll leave it there today. I appreciate each and every one of you guys being here. We're just trying to keep these lives 1 hour long. Next week, we may just go over the 8th house. We'll see. AMC's at 7% doing its thing today. Hopefully this is the full moon pop that keeps going up. And then
I really hope next week we're here having the same conversation.
Yeah, that would be.
It's exciting. Great. It looks interesting for sure.
Yep. GameStop's making a good move, almost up 4% today. So hopefully we keep going this direction. I'm definitely keeping my fingers crossed, but no matter what, I'm always going to hold. Whoop said thank you. Metro said thank you. Guys, thank you guys so much for being here. Emily, if they want to get in touch with you, get a reading from you, keep up with your astro updates, where can they find you? Where can I get your information?
You can find all my socials on my website at lovemoneyvenus.com. And literally everything I have is up there. But I'm usually hanging out on Twitter. A lot of us are. So come find us.
Yes. And me and Emily are in the making of creating our own reading for you guys. So if you guys want more information about it, just hit one of us up and you guys will be first in line, and we're going to give you guys discounts for the first people who join before we get it up on the site. And so if you guys want to keep up with any of my stuff, you can guys check me out, of course, at the Market Moonlord. The Moonlords are at the Discord. So if you are a Moonlord, not on the Discord, check us out, the Market Moonlord. And my site is thebluemoonofneptune.com. Joey, or not, oh yeah, Joey, what's up? Oh man, Joey just came in, and Co Jones just came in. Veterans in the game. I appreciate you guys.
So this is a good one for Joey and everybody coming in from their lunch break. Also, we have heard so many people have asked for this. We're starting a podcast. So we're going to have the audios of these up in a podcast form, and we're doing like a couple of other things just to go. So anybody who's like, you know, commuting and doing all that kind of stuff and can't be watching YouTube at the same time, we heard you and it's coming.
Facts. So, okay. So we'll leave it there for you guys. Appreciate you guys being here. You're here with me, Jason, and with Emily. This is the Market Moonlord, where we merge the matrix with the motherfucking stars. I appreciate you guys being here. Until next time, peace.
Bye, everybody.
Pow. Beautiful.